Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Renew Podcast. I am your host, Kristen Andre, and I have Derek Distin back with me again this week.
Yay.
So thank you for being here. We let you come back. But
or
today,
I snuck through the door.
He snuck in, is what it is. Now, today we're talking about a totally different topic. We talked about culture and business and culture last week, but we've got a lot of requests for this one, and I know you're as passionate about this as I am. We're going to be talking about all things LinkedIn.
Yes.
I love LinkedIn.
Do you?
I do. Now, I don't love it as much as, some of my guilty pleasures with like Instagram and Facebook. However, it's changed a lot over the years. I was probably one of the very, very early adopters of LinkedIn. And when I launched my consulting firm back in 2009, I did a lot of work around social media and LinkedIn, but it was just starting. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's the reason I love it, it's evolved, right, but there's so much opportunity that people are missing. And I know when we polled our audience about what they wanted to hear about, LinkedIn was one of the big topics. And it was more like, how do you use it? Mm-hmm. How do you use it the right way? Because a decade ago, it was a resume.
Well, it was. We talked last time I was on about sort of the change in the workplace where it's no longer work you and you.
Right.
They're a little bit more tied together. People are more free to be themselves.
That's what I love about LinkedIn is because it's
changed.
Starting to get there.
Right.
Not there yet.
What's really funny too is LinkedIn began literally as a way to be linked into a network, right?
Yes.
And Facebook was, basically at the time it was Facebook for you, and LinkedIn for work you.
Yes.
You said that in your opinion it's evolved.
I think it's starting to. That's what I love about it, because I don't do well with the work hat and the personal hat. I have blurred those lines since the beginning of time.
You own your own business, of course you do.
I do. Well, that's probably why, because in corporate, the line had to be very distinct, and that never really fit with me, which is why I'm a lot more entrepreneurial. But I think what I love about LinkedIn is, what I love most about it is the opportunity. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're there yet. I think it's starting to tip, but you're right. Like it was originally, it was Facebook for personal. And I would still look at Facebook. Like if I was hiring somebody, I'd totally stalk their Facebook to make sure they're not wackadoodle people.
Dirty secret people do. Always check it. I say this to a lot of folks who come to me and ask for advice on trying to get a job. I'm like, first of all, you need to clean up your last 6 months worth of history. And it's not to say that companies don't look for, that they will overlook personal things, but man, you can have some serious red flags in there.
Oh, I agree.
And
definitely agree.
It's got nothing to do with political stances or where you stand on a societal issue. Some of it, if you are posting something that just is vulgar and obscene, there's a chance that would reflect on the company at some point down the road. They're going to say, definitely. Two equal candidates, I'm going to take the person who isn't throwing out the F-bombs every time.
Right, and it's less controversial. Right. Like I try not to, I like to say I don't judge people. My children argue with me and they tell me I do. And
you're an 8. We talked about that last time.
I'm an 8. That's right. Is what I do. But I think part of it is that I look for people that align with my values and core beliefs and things like that. Not that I'm going to, completely dismiss other people, because I think everybody should have their own opinions. But I do look at it. Right. It does weigh, and I think for a lot of us it does. And LinkedIn is a little bit more, I don't want to say cleaner of a place, but it's an opportunity to put your professional foot forward. But it's evolved from there. I'm hoping for a lot of people it has not, but I think our opportunity is evolve it beyond the resume and bring in that personal side a little bit.
I like to say, you do still find some of the, and regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, I'm just going to use the MAGA arguments, the Make America Great Again arguments.
Yep.
You clearly see those on Facebook.
Yes.
All over the place. I mean, that's part of the algorithm, is putting those things into people's faces because you interact with them. You don't see quite as much of that on LinkedIn.
Maybe that's why I like LinkedIn, because I don't like I know when we talked about last week about the Enneagram, you're the peacemaker. I'm not. I'm the disruptor. However, I don't like argument for argument's sake, because you're not going to change anybody's mind. But maybe that's why I like LinkedIn, because it is a little happier. It is, people are sharing good news. They're not sharing controversial topics.
You have an understanding. LinkedIn, I would say part of the evolution has come because LinkedIn really decided what it was. It was a work community.
Yes.
And like it or not, there's a little bit of a desire not to bring things like politics and argument into the workplace, right? We're taught that in order for our business, for us to succeed, we have to be finding cooperation.
Yes.
And so LinkedIn has this idea that it's around work. So you don't see as much of that. Now,
I think that's a prudent decision.
it is.
But that doesn't mean you can't bring other aspects
Right.
of your personality
And
into
that's
it.
where you see those lovely stories about, this business donated to hurricane relief in Haiti, or here's a positive story about this cancer survivor who is now running this department. There's a lot of those kind of things that you see with LinkedIn, and I'm with you.
Yep.
When I browse and start scrolling through the feed on LinkedIn, 9 times out of 10, it is going to be a positive or uplifting story where I'm going to walk away from, when I close my browser, I'm going to walk away from that a little bit happier.
Yeah.
Or a lot happier than I would have been if I was looking at Facebook.
Yeah. Well, my Facebook is a happy, smiley place because the algorithms, we know how they work. I only interact with the good stuff, so I see more positive things. And I try not to fall into clickbait. Now, if Keanu Reeves or if he's on the clickbait, I'm falling in. But he usually has positive things.
BuzzFeed, 23 stories about why Keanu Reeves is the greatest celebrity ever.
And they're all 23 accurate. So yeah. All right, let me not go down the Keanu hole.
We're falling down a wiki hole here.
Yeah, but it's really about keeping things positives and doing that. And LinkedIn allows you to do that. So let's back up a little bit and start from the beginning with LinkedIn, because I know our listeners want to hear a lot about how to maximize it. And I think it starts with your profile.
And so I want to be very clear. I am not a LinkedIn expert.
Neither am I, but we're pretending to be today.
I haven't done studies. I haven't written any books on LinkedIn. I'm just someone who has used it advantageously and finds a lot of benefit from it.
I will say I wrote a social media column on how to leverage social media for 5 years for a magazine called Investment News. So I feel like I might
I'm
have
sitting
a
with the
little
expert.
history. It's been a while and the algorithms have changed, but we're going to pretend like we're experts in this today.
It's still the same thing. It's still a website, right?
It's still a website.
The first thing to understand is LinkedIn is very, very, very highly scored in Google's search algorithm. I would challenge folks right now, while you're listening to this podcast, Google yourself. Literally just type in Google.
Go Google yourself, people.
I promise you, unless you are someone who has a super well-known brand, business brand that you've spent a lot of time search engine optimizing, SEO, or you're very famous, I promise you the first or the second hit is going to be your LinkedIn profile. Now, Kristen, don't do it.
I am totally Googling this
I did it yesterday.
right now.
Andre Group comes up as number 1. Your LinkedIn profile came up as number 2.
It is. All right, so since you Googled me yesterday, you're correct. All right, so I did just do this. My website came up. Thank you to my web developers for getting that number 1. My LinkedIn came up second. And then there's several other things that are coming up. Yeah.
Now, I
Instagram, Twitter, it's all the social medias, but LinkedIn was the first of the social media platforms that came up.
I didn't believe this, so I did it myself, and LinkedIn profile was the number 1 thing that came up for me. Now, I don't have my own business. I don't have a team developing a website for me. But I have done some things that have made the news in the past. Right. I played college sports. I played semi-professional football for years.
Nice.
Was on Master Chef. So I've done some things that
That's
could.
Kinda cool.
Yeah, I've done some things that could pop up.
Yep.
LinkedIn is still the top hit. When you Google my name, it's still the number 1 thing that comes up.
That's so critical as to why, if that's the first thing people are finding about you, one of the first things, you've got to have it represent you and not be just a resume. And that's where I see a lot of people going wrong. It's like their profile reads like a resume.
It is your opportunity to build your brand, your work brand, if you will. It is not an opportunity for you to put on, I call it the interview mask.
Right.
You put your best face forward when you walk into that interview, and you're going to only say the things that you know the interviewer wants to hear. That's not what LinkedIn should be. It shouldn't be a blank slate with just your resume. It should be an opportunity for you to say, here's who I am. And they offer a headline in there that you can put that is different than saying your job title. And that should be your first chance to say who you are. So I don't have mine memorized verbatim. Mine says something like service director. And then I think it says success facilitator, team builder, evolving coach.
Okay.
None of those are things, with the exception of the service director, that are job titles for things. But
I think a lot of people do put their titles.
Right. And that headline is not for your job title. Your job title has a very specific spot on there for you. It should be letting people know who you are.
Right.
I love building teams. I love working on coaching. Now, I don't do it for a profession, but I love working with people. I love helping people be successful.
And I think the more you can speak to that as to what you enjoy and how you're going to solve their problems and how those two fit together, then people are more connected. Because if they read just the resume, there's nothing kind of intriguing them.
There's nothing on a resume on LinkedIn that I wouldn't also submit if I was applying for a job, right?
Right.
And unfortunately, there are jokes about this, right? Upload your resume here, and then you click next, and it says, now fill in all these things that were on your resume, but we don't have time.
There.
Yeah, exactly. So there's nothing that's on the LinkedIn sort of resume portion, your job history, that isn't going to exist on those. But what you can use that LinkedIn portion for is to expand on that.
Right.
Talk a little bit more. If a recruiter, if you're looking to get a job and a recruiter lands on your LinkedIn page, they're already probably looking at your resume. They want to know a little bit more. And this is that opportunity to take that, we're all taught a resume should be one page, sort of, maybe a cover letter before it. And so you hit the bullet points and you wind up finding those, synergistic success facilitator. What does that mean?
All right. So let's talk about that for a minute, because when I look at resume, and I get resumes when I just hired for some positions, and I've got resumes in, and you'll hear these, but I don't know who y'all are hiring to tell y'all to put these buzzwords. I hate them. Like, I literally will almost get rid of the resume when it's saying that I am a,
adaptive.
Exactly.
Driven.
Duh. Well, and that's kind of, there's some, I call them the book of duh, like where you're like, well, I would hope you're because I've never seen a resume that says lazy and incompetent. So I feel like we've got an opportunity to show some personality and to show how you're different. Like, I look for the word I coin with a lot of my clients is, I'm like, I want to find your uniqueifier.
Yes.
Totally a word I made up, but I love it. I want to know what's different about you and your profile, or you specifically, your personal brand, than everybody out. And if you're using the same adjectives
everybody else
everyone,
is using those,
that you don't stand out.
No, not at all. And that's where LinkedIn is beneficial. So again, we're probably talking about this a little bit from the recruiting hiring standpoint right now. LinkedIn allows you to be a little bit more. And that's why I say LinkedIn's an opportunity for you to build your brand.
Yes.
Now, I'm not talking about building a brand like the Andre Group where you literally have a brand.
Right.
This is literally, no, as a human, as a worker, as a job seeker, as a person who is in a professional position, every one of us has a brand.
Yes.
There's a famous quote by Dwight Eisenhower that says, I'm going to butcher it. It's something along the lines of, if you can't bring humor to work, I can't remember all of it, but basically humor is part of leadership.
Yes.
Is essentially what he's saying.
It's part of being a non-boring person.
But that's exactly it. So I live by that. I bring a lot of humor. I have in meetings where I am 2 levels below sitting. I'm sitting in like a board meeting or an executive meeting where I happen to be presenting later on. I'll throw in a joke. Because you know what? That's going to be me. And whether I wind up sitting there someday or not, I'm not going to walk into this room and not be myself. So a lot of the posts that I will put on LinkedIn will have an element of humor to it, because it is not a time to whitewash yourself and put that interview face on.
Because then you blend in with the masses. I think if you're blending in, LinkedIn gives you an opportunity to stand out professionally.
Right.
I mean, I am fluent in sarcasm. I don't know. Now I'm thinking, I'm like, I probably need to spice up the LinkedIn and be a little more sassy. But
no, you don't. But it's perfect. That's sarcasm.
But you've got to think that, like, how can you stand out, whether it's humor or, caring or anything. So I think the profile showing a personality is a big opportunity that people are missing.
And not just that, the profile photo itself.
Yes. Oh, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Some of y'all listen, well, not the ones listening because y'all are fantastic, but your friends, they have profile photos that are from literally 1970. If you're gentlemen, if your big collar polyester suit from 1978 and your photo is still black and white, I kid you not, I have seen some of these photos.
Unless that is literally what you wear to the office and that's part of your personality.
All right. So I have a lot of clients in the financial space, and I always professionally cyber stalk them when they've approached me about working with them. And I distinctly remember one gentleman who is probably, he's late 50s. He's not older, but his picture on LinkedIn was when he had first joined the company he was with. And he had a bigger, thicker tie and there was a lot of collar.
Shoulder pads.
Yeah. I said, well, that's the girl. Yeah, the girls. Hey, they're making a comeback. But this gentleman, who is totally bald, had a big old head of hair and a black and white picture. Yeah. And I'm like, if somebody came to meet you, they're going to be looking around the restaurant trying to figure out where you are because you look nothing like. I mean, come on.
Yep.
The photo, and don't use the one. It's funny. Like I've seen. I'm going to go ahead and call some people out, not by name. I have seen people with, it's obvious they're at a bar and they've cropped out whoever's next to them. I have seen you probably shouldn't be wearing that to the office photos. There's some bad, y'all need to take it.
How many of those did you knock back before taking this photo?
Exactly. So first rule of LinkedIn profile, development, take a little look-see at your photo.
Well, I heard
see
this.
If Grandma would have.
This is not a quote from me. I heard this somewhere along the line. What 3 words do you want your photo to convey? That's it. Think of the 3 words you want your photo to convey.
Okay.
Is your photo conveying that? And again,
I'm still trying to think of my 3 words.
Well, think of one word. Kristen, think of one word. Would you want it to say professional? Would you want your photo to convey the word professional? Would you want it to convey caring? Would you want it to convey funny? Would you want it, think of the words that you want your photo to convey and then ask yourself, does my photo convey those words?
All right.
I
like that. I'm sitting looking, I'm still thinking of 3 words. Yeah. Okay.
We're getting
and
deep.
I think that's good. And it's got to be 3 professional words, because the first thing I want it to go good looking, but probably not on LinkedIn.
Well, not necessarily. If you're in a business where that can be help you with clientele or something. Great.
Yes, that is true. Right. That is true. All right, so that's the profile. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about when we connect with people and how we connect with people, because I have 2. Like I know you've talked about this and sending a personalized connection request. I'm big on that. I think you ought to, because it automatically says Kristen would like to connect with you on LinkedIn. And it takes 2 seconds to add a little extra touch.
Right.
I don't personalize it sometimes if I'm at an event, you can do on the app where you're just connecting with people right there because you can find them. I don't personalize it then, but I try to say, hey, it was great meeting you here or something like that.
Right. If it's a connection that might be sort of warranted or understood or expected, right? People in your network, someone new joins the company, I'm just going to send them a request, something like that. Cool, that's fine.
No need to personalize.
Yeah, it's like Facebook friend requests, right? Yeah, shoot, I know you, we've met before, etc. Bingo, let's just connect. If you're using it to interact with a prospect,
yes.
I mean, how many of us get those emails that filter in where it says, so-and-so would like to connect with you. You click yes, and the next thing you know, hey, Kristen, have you ever thought about launching a podcast?
Can we talk about that for a minute? Because y'all, when you're listening to this, I need you to write this down. I need you to write it down again. Then I want you to highlight it, because what you just said is so important. Don't immediately spam somebody the second. I mean, you know that because I told you that one. I got a request within 30 seconds of accepting. And I accepted the request, and the reply back almost immediately was, Kristen, have you ever thought about launching a podcast?
Right.
I can help you do that. And I'm like, my podcast's been in the air. It literally is on my profile. There is a link to it on my profile. So the person obviously didn't even look.
Nope.
He just sent me a request.
And that's where, so that's where it's important if you are prospecting. I hate these CRM style things where it's tagged to Salesforce or something, and you know that they're sending that to 150 people a day.
Yeah.
And they're
it's just
ball.
At all.
Part of that is where, getting back to the earlier point about your headline, if you will, that can play a part in this, right? For years, mine said something, technical service director. I would get hit up by sales folks and recruiters nonstop saying, have you considered this CRM? Did you know that we do offshoring for sourcing for developers, blah, blah, blah. None of the stuff that has anything to do with what I actually do. It was because my title said something. That's where putting some truth into your title can actually help negate some of that, or conversely, attract the right. I have found that I'm connecting with a lot more folks who are interested in leadership, culture, and success.
Yes.
Now that I have that in there instead of it just saying technical service director.
Well, and I think that's important. As you were saying that, it was making me think about how many of these spammy things you get. So I just looked at my most recent messages on LinkedIn. I had to go 17 deep to get to a person I know.
Right.
That, and the 16 before my friend had emailed me as a response, or messaged me as a response to an article I'd posted. But it's my no. Everyone else was trying to sell me something. And I personally, the way I operate my business, I'm a person to person, I'm a relationship person. I am not doing business with people I don't know. I mean, if you cold approach me, your likelihood of ever getting through or ever getting a response is zero.
Right.
I mean, it is flat out zero. That's just me. I know a lot of people, this obviously works for some folks, or they wouldn't keep doing it.
You throw enough at the wall, something's going to stick.
Well, for me in my business, I don't want things that have been thrown against the wall. I just don't. So if your approach was, hey, I was talking to Derek, he said it might be worth a conversation. I don't know. For sure. Like, you throw a mutual friend in there and I will check. I will legit check, because I've had people pull that too. Like, oh, so-and-so said great things about you. And I'll call so-and-so and say, who is this person? They're like, I have no idea.
Yep.
So I think you've got to be honest in your approach. But that's where I see an opportunity with LinkedIn, is the person that masters how to take the relationship into messaging, as opposed to the cold approach and the CRM approach, it's going to be a gold mine.
And I think the secret to that, so if you are prospecting, you are interested in either connecting with someone because you want to sell them a service, a good, et cetera, or you're trying to make connections, really. Right. That's where that, as you said, personalization of that message comes in. Let me ask you a question. Of those 16 most recent messages, did you respond to any of them?
Nope.
Okay.
Not at all. And I don't personally respond. This is a cross social media for me too, not just LinkedIn. For sure on Facebook and Instagram, because I do get more inappropriate messages there. Yep. My personal choice is I don't respond to somebody that I don't know personally.
Okay.
On LinkedIn, it would be, and I'd say LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I did get a request on Instagram recently for somebody who was interested in speaking, and the person mentioned a common friend.
Okay.
That I know very well. So if I'm quickly able to verify, hey, this is a legit person, I respond. But even on LinkedIn, I don't, unless you've mentioned somebody I know and I've checked it, I personally don't respond. And, I've heard the argument, well, you might be missing some opportunities. I might be. And I am 1,000,000% okay with that.
I have taken, over the last 3 months, sort of running a little bit of a test. How many of those people that I respond to with no's will actually take time to follow up? And you know what? Very few of them do. Most of them just never hear from me.
Yep.
Hey, Bob, thanks. Not interested.
Yep.
And I kind of have this canned response. Hey, Bob, thanks. Not interested. The folks who do come back and say, okay, thanks so much for your time. Would there be someone else I could talk to?
Yep.
That's where I'm going to go, oh, so you're actually interested?
Okay, I wouldn't respond, but if I did, I think I'd follow your path too. I want them to engage. I'm looking for engagement.
And so if you're the person doing the prospecting and you're sending out 500 of these a day, if you get something back from someone, they might be pissed as all get out.
Yep.
That you sent them something cold, but they took the time to respond back. A simple thank you to them is going to put them in a different frame of mind. And a simple thank you followed by, great, thanks. Is there someone else who I should be talking to at your organization about this? Puts me to go, oh, you know what? I should contact Jim about this. Here's someone who may be interested in it. And you don't have to give them that name. That's up to you.
Right.
But
I like the fact they took the time to respond to your response.
And it's that human element of communication that comes in. Because if you're in sales, think of it this way. If you're standing in a conference hall and you're out there with a bunch of folks who you're looking at and saying, I would love to get new clients out of this.
Yep.
You don't go up to someone and say, hi, I'm Kristen. Can I sell you this? And if they say no, you don't go,
right.
Hi, thanks so much for your time.
I think that's a good analogy because so many times on social media, it is social. It is an interaction with somebody. And we forget because the computer screen's in front of us that it's still a human. Not all the time, but most of the time it's a human. So we do want to respond kindly. I just ignore them.
And we've forgotten.
I guess I'm the ghoster of LinkedIn. Huh?
We've forgotten because so much of our interaction on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram are not in direct messages or something like that. I understand they exist, right?
Right.
But they're not in that.
I'm getting a lot of them in direct messages.
With those, a lot of times what we're interacting with is someone else's post.
Yes.
Where you feel free. I don't know person X who's going to respond underneath this, and there's 5,000 other comments. I don't care. That message in LinkedIn, whether it's earnest or not, that's a one-to-one communication someone is trying. So I would say if you're looking to engage for prospecting purposes, yes, you're going to get a lot of ghosts.
Yes.
But if the person takes time, send them a thank you back.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Would this ever be something you're interested in? Just think of me down the road.
And I think if you are going to take the cold approach, like I said, for me, myself personally, it doesn't work. But what I would notice, I'm trying to think in scenarios I'd pay attention. I like to engage with posts. I like to follow people. I like to comment. I like to like. If you're commenting and liking, and this is where I think there's a lot of opportunity for people. I'm not talking about if you have 1 million prospects and you're trying to send out 100 cold requests a day. I'm talking about I've got 20 people that I would love to get as clients. And those are the people that I'm looking at their posts and I'm commenting and I'm liking and whatever. And if you're somebody that's followed me and you've liked on, after a while, I start to recognize your name. I'm like, oh, they comment a lot. Mm-hmm. Like even, when we did the podcast last week, we had a lot of people lives, a lot of people that follow, I recognize the name. Some of them I know personally, but some of them, a lot of the people that have been longtime listeners of this show, I don't know them personally, but they comment. So if they, and I see their name pop up and I see this, so even though I don't know them personally, if those folks sent me a message in LinkedIn, I would respond.
Well, and because
they had taken time to engage with me, even though I don't know them, that would be a standout to me.
And the way the algorithms work, the more you engage with someone, the more likely they are to show up in your feed, the more likely you are to show up in theirs.
Right.
So if you are trying, if I was back in a previous life when I was in sales, if I was trying to meet you, Kristen, I had some new fancy wingding to sell you that's going to be awesome for the podcast, right?
Right.
I have no idea who you are, but I've targeted you and I've said Kristen would be a great, purchaser of this thing. If I start interacting with your posts, laying the groundwork ahead of time, guess what? If I am also doing what we talked about earlier, building my brand. So I post a lot of short articles and posts on LinkedIn. Those, if you even respond to me once and on a response that I put on your post, mine are now going to start showing up in yours.
Absolutely.
And guess what? There gets to be that level of, I recognize this name. Where do I recognize that name? And then I time my reach out. All of a sudden I put a post up there. You happen to say something to it. I'm like, hey, thanks so much, Kristen. And then I reach out to you. Now all of a sudden there's a response. And in my reach out, as we said, the personalized message, hey, really enjoyed that. Would love to connect.
Right. And then you do it. And that's where I think our opportunity is. That's how I like to use LinkedIn. That's how I've always liked to use LinkedIn. But again, I'm not looking at millions and millions of people. But I think even if you have a large market or a large pool you're fishing from a prospect standpoint, we've got an opportunity to engage and personalize it a bit.
And this gets back to the original point that we were talking about here. It is no longer just a work thing.
Correct.
Build your brand. Add some of that joie de vivre, who you are, to your page, so that I hit up Kristen and say, Kristen, would love to connect. You're going to, who is this guy? I'm going to Google him. Guess what shows
Right.
up? Here's my LinkedIn. Even though I hit you up on LinkedIn, you're going to Google me. Here's my
Right.
LinkedIn. You go to it. You take a look at it. You see a post where I've talked about a recent one I posted doing some raking with my children and how it taught me a leadership lesson.
Yes.
Insight: kids don't know how to use leaf blowers. Okay. If you want to save time down the road rather than time in that afternoon, teach them, lead them into learning to use the leaf blower.
But that's a great example of blending personal and professional.
And it's all work related.
Yep.
Right? Again, I'm passionate about leadership development, cultural development, professional development. It's something I love to do and work with. I'm bringing my family in so people see that I'm a human being.
Right.
I'm posting this stuff. It's kind of funny. Yes, again, as I said, I throw some humor in there. But you go and you find that, you hit on you're like, oh, he is a human being.
Right.
Maybe I will respond to this. And even if it's a no, there's that connection. I'm no longer
You're not a stranger.
I'm no longer the avatar of
Yep.
a picture. Even though we're separated by computers, you recognize there's a human being on the other side of this.
And that's a great way to be human. I noticed I was on LinkedIn yesterday, and one of my connections had posted. Now, I wouldn't have thought of it until you said this, but he had posted a picture of his daughter skiing, and they'd gone skiing, and she didn't know how, and she kept falling down, and he was like, she was crying, and she was this, and she was mad. And he's like, I finally said, do you want to stop? And she goes, I'm not quitting. And so his post was a picture of her, and he told the story and told what happened. And he said, how she ended up being so thankful that she didn't give up, and he related it to business. And I know this person. This is somebody I do know, not well. We've worked in professional settings before. But I've read that post, and I felt so much more connected. Where I'm like, gosh, he's a human, he's a family person. And this is at the end of the day where I would love to see LinkedIn's going. Like I said, I think it's evolved because we're seeing snippets of that. That's what I meant by its evolution. I think the opportunity is for it to fully evolve there, where people can say, okay, this is a personal story, and here's the business tie that I made to it.
Right.
And it humanizes all of us. It humanizes that. Because I think about when my kids have fallen down, and when I've fallen down, and, do you get back up? I think there's just such an opportunity to use pictures, videos, things like that show all the good stuff about us.
And maybe I'm not in marketing. Maybe that's a tagline for them somewhere down the road. Bringing the human into the workplace or something like that, right? Because that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Go
ahead.
I was going to say another point that I want to make too, and this is LinkedIn is a place where you can be less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less fake, less Instagram, right? How many of us
You are correct, because I don't use filtered pictures on LinkedIn like I do on Instagram.
And how many of us have an Instagram, and for every post that we put up of ourselves, there are 25 that we have deleted because we didn't have the right head tilt or whatever.
I would like to know
filter.
who has 25 they've deleted, because I probably have 50.
Okay.
For every. No, I'm just teasing.
But
I'm just teasing.
But
I take like one picture and then edit the heck out of it.
That's the point. Is on Instagram, if you're going to post a 8-second video, or I don't even know what stories or whatever they're called. I'm showing myself as I'm never on Instagram.
A story or a reel.
If you would do that on Instagram, but or you desire to do that on Instagram, but you're afraid to because it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be keeping up with or even competing with the Joneses. LinkedIn is a place where you absolutely can. So here's a great tip I heard from a podcast I listened to about 2 years ago. If you're looking to build your brand or let people know who you are, or even just put yourself out there a little bit more so that you can be you. Mm-hmm. Start with LinkedIn. Start with some videos that talk about you, and it can be as simple as pulling that phone out, holding it up and saying, I got a question for you guys.
Yep.
Ask your question, submit, send it. I started doing this.
That's a super easy way to get started doing videos.
I started doing this several years ago, and I don't like the whole social media. I have to post this perfect picture of me because I feel the need to. So I won't. I just sort of stay away from it. Like
I think a lot of people do that. And I think it's probably, I'm surprised you say that as a guy. I think it's more common with women that we feel like our pictures have to be perfect. And I know there's a lot of influencers that I follow that don't. They're very big into, let's just show up the way you are. Right. And I love that. I think it's fantastic. I'm not there yet. I'm inching along. But you second guess everything. And I think it's just more, people don't care. Like they just want to see you and get to know you.
And so what the challenge was to post 20 to 30 second videos and just asking a question. And it can be about a topic you are interested in. I took up running 2 years ago as the pandemic started. Now, I think I mentioned last week, played football, played rugby. So for me, running was 100 yards. Okay. Like, never had to run longer than that. Yeah. So pandemic started, wasn't going to the gym, took up running, challenged by my wife to take up running, started it. Got to the point of now where if I don't go for a run at least every other day and get in a couple of kilometers, I feel it. Okay. Like I understand now why people get addicted to running.
Yes.
I use that as my time to listen to podcasts. That is literally when I will listen to business podcasts. And on the weekends, I make it a point every single weekend, I'm going to run a personal 5K, at least 5K.
Okay.
So I've got anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes where I can listen to a podcast. And so I started doing this thing where I would get done with my run, and I usually did them on Sundays. And whatever topic I'd been listening to, if it had spurred a question for me, I'd take a video of myself as I walked back into my neighborhood. Hey guys, quick question. Was listening to this podcast, by this person, and they were talking about this. I don't find this to be true in our workplace, but I'm wondering what anybody else thinks. Send.
That's a great way to drive engagement because you're asking a question. People are going to respond.
It's exactly what it is. Now, I don't have a lot of followers. I don't have a brand. Again, my LinkedIn is just me.
Yep.
That's what it is.
But I think for people like me, entrepreneurs, people that are doing things out, or even if you're not, even if it's just your personal brand, that's a great, great way to engage. I got to look at this now.
So I started getting, and that's, again, back to that point of changing your headline to be more about who you are.
Right.
I started getting connection requests from other people who would listen to they'd see that and they might comment real quick, but I started getting requests from people, and I made some connections with some folks all across the world. None of us do anything that's similar at all. In fact, we're not trying to sell each other or anything. It's just like, hey, I loved your comment on that. By the way, I saw you comment on this post by that guy on his podcast, which is why I followed you, and I saw your question here. I'd love to connect. And some of them I've never talked to beyond like one interaction. Right. But you know what? That is relationship and network building.
But that's where I think LinkedIn can go. I mean, it's already there. It's getting there, but I feel like that was the purpose of it to start. I think it did start as a resume thing, but now the purpose is really to connect because you never know where any of these things are going to go. I mean, it's really interesting. My oldest is in law school, and I've shared some of her posts and shared things like that. And I've had attorneys I'm connected to, some I know very well and some that I don't, reach out to me like, oh, great to see your daughter. Hey, if I can be a resource, do that. Because people love, a lot of people love helping, especially kids. So here I am, a post about bragging on my daughter, and people like, we'd love to help her, which is cool. I mean, as a parent, you're like, all right, this is awesome. But that's part of the opportunity, is to connect with people, because you don't know. I'm a big person in helping first. I want to help somebody before I ever ask anything of them. But I think and that's what they were doing. They were reaching out like, hey, how can I help you? And that's a great thing.
And they trusted you because it wasn't a fake post on Instagram or Facebook or something. It was something posted on a reputable space. And I'll say it this way. I would say LinkedIn might be the last reputable social networking space that exists, where people will probably tend to trust first.
Yes.
As opposed to doubt first.
So let's unpack that for a minute, because I agree with you. And there's a caveat to that. And this is where I need to put this out there, because as book of duh as this seems to people, LinkedIn is first and foremost a business platform.
Right.
I had this conversation with I work with a lot of women, I have a lot of women clients. Over 90% of us, the women, I don't know about men, women have been asked out in direct messages on LinkedIn. And I, myself included, and I just feel like I need to say this for you guys listening. Stop it. Just stop it.
Don't.
Like if I wanted to be, if y'all ruin LinkedIn for me because you're asking out all the ladies, I'm not going to be happy. Now, I'm sure it goes the other way. I'm sure there are women asking out men. Y'all need to stop that too, because I think it is the last professional site. And I don't want y'all to chink this armor and ruin this for all of us professionally, because I didn't think it was a big deal until I started talking. I'm like, hey, have you ever had this happen? And there are a few of us that are in similar industries that have been asked out by the same people. And it's bad. So I don't know, as dumb as that sounds, and I hate to even have to mention it, but the fact that it's so rampant in the professional circles I run in, I just think that's something to be mentioned. Don't screw this up.
Yeah.
It is professional.
Don't do that. And clearly you face a different world than I do, right?
I'm
Man and woman.
50-year-old woman
Right.
on LinkedIn.
I mean,
Y'all got to be desperate going to LinkedIn to ask out somebody in their 50s, but still.
if you wouldn't walk into your first day on the job at a brand new company and you see someone sitting next to you, if you wouldn't just turn and ask them out, don't do it on your network.
I agree with
That's ridiculous.
Totally agree.
That's ridiculous.
And it's, like I said, I hate to mention, but I was surprised. I thought it was kind of like an outlier until I started talking with other people, and I'm in a few women's forums and groups and things like that. And these aren't these are high level executives. And so it was very interesting. It was very eye-opening to me that that's occurring, but I just felt like I wanted to mention it because it is the last professional place. It's the last place. I will say the other thing I think that is great about LinkedIn that I've not seen this change, and I hope it never does, is LinkedIn is probably the only social platform out there, because it is at the end of the day social media.
Right.
The only social platform out there that I see an abundance of kindness.
Agreed.
And I don't see that in other platforms. I don't see people bashing folks. I don't see people saying that's a terrible opinion. This is truly one of the things I think is wrong with our world right now is we don't have genuine compassion and kindness for people, and we don't have a love for other people, and we don't have a respect for people's opinions that differ, except for our little LinkedIn bubble. And I think that's why I love it so much, and I want more people diving into it, because you can get some good stuff there.
Oh, I think it get back to that point I made a minute ago. It's the last of the trusted sites, the of the social media platforms. It's the last of the ones where you see somebody post something and you don't immediately go cynical.
Yes.
You look at it and you say, "Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a great story." Or they've got a post about their position. Have you ever looked at someone on LinkedIn and seen their title and gone, I don't really believe that's what your title is? No, we give them the benefit of the doubt. And we say, oh, that's great. You look at someone on Instagram and they're like, hey, I drive this great fancy car. You're like, yeah, right. You rented that for the day.
You don't.
Yep.
That's totally true. That's definitely what we think.
Right. But so LinkedIn, there's still trust that exists. And it is a great networking opportunity used correctly. Again, personalized messages. Mm-hmm. Follow up. Even if you're using the CRM strategy of I'm just going to throw 1,000 requests out there. If one person gets back to you and says thanks, no thanks, hey, thanks.
But don't try to push them again.
Hey, no, yeah. And
thanks for your response.
Yep. Build your brand. Be yourself, who you are at work, right? Don't be, like you said, don't post a photo of yourself in that polyester suit from 1973 at that party that you went to where you cropped out that disco dancer who became your ex-wife.
54.
Right?
Yeah.
Be yourself. Be honest.
Yes.
But use it as an opportunity to explain more. Don't lie and say, I was the CEO at this company after being the CEO at that company when all you did was deliver pizza for the last 3 years. And don't say, what's the story? I changed a light bulb. It's something about like performed janitorial services without supervision to enhance the lighting of the situation. Like don't say that.
That's awesome.
Don't say that.
Well, that goes to that kitschy language.
Right.
I'm like, just talk like a human. Talk like human.
Be a human. And use that LinkedIn opportunity to explain it. Hey, all I did for the last 3 years was change light bulbs. Here's why. This is what they needed done. This is what I wanted to do.
Right.
This is what I did. And you know what? I did a pretty darn good job at it.
And I had some fun while I was doing it.
Great. Now when I need a light bulb changer, I know exactly who to go to.
Right. And that's, we've got LinkedIn, I think, is less, like you said, it's less fake. Like it's people they're more real there. It is professional. And but that's what's interesting is we're talking about LinkedIn because it started as a professional site, even though we're weaving in. And I feel like people are more real and more honest, where there's not as much as keeping up with the Joneses in the workplace. You just go to work and you're you.
Right.
It for whatever work looks like.
Right.
And that's the line I'd love to see blurred a little bit around, let's just be real everywhere.
Right.
Like I always say, I'm a what you see is what you get. You may not like what you see, but I am no different with my clients than I am, with my friends.
Right.
I'm kind of the same person. And I feel like, my LinkedIn profile is probably a little more, I don't want to say sterile, but it talks more about professional accomplishments.
When was the last time you updated your LinkedIn profile?
Probably, I do it I would say quarterly, at least I make some type of change to it.
Now, were you updating it or were you re-examining it?
Probably re-examining.
Okay.
I would think. So I would say I haven't made drastic changes. I may change some wording.
Mm-hmm.
There may be something new, a new project that I add. There may be something where I'm like, oh, I'm kind of really focusing more on this, and I'll change my summary a little bit or things like that.
I should have clarified. Updating to me is exactly that. Oh, I'm going to make some tweaks, little things here and there. Oh, I've got this new job. I've taken this additional responsibility on. I'm going to update it. Re-examining is when I'm looking at it and going, is this really telling the story right now that I want to be told?
Yeah.
And it's a storytelling device. It's telling the professional you story. And so I would say if people should do this probably once a year or so, look at it and say, what is this really saying about me? Is it time that I updated my title, my headline? Do I put a new picture on there? Again, the 3 photos or the 3 words. What do you want? What 3 words do you want your photo to say about you?
I like that. I'm probably due for an update then, just like reestablish, because I do tweak it a lot. It's definitely current, and I feel like a lot of us do that, where we're like, okay, let's keep it current, let's keep it relevant. But in terms of like going into a new year and my strategy and the things we're focusing on as a company this year, it's probably due to say, all right, here's our business focuses right now.
To me, an update is something happened. I need to add that or delete that.
Right.
Re-examining is, what's the destination? What am I really trying to do with this? Okay. Do I keep it the same?
Right.
Do I make some changes? And I would argue it's time that we do that more frequently. Stop thinking about LinkedIn as the place where you post your resume and hope a recruiter finds you or that you can find somebody. Start treating it as what it is, a networking opportunity to build out your community. And I love the idea, the cultural crusade. Bring back civilized. Stop asking people out on LinkedIn. That's not what it's for.
But I think you're right. I love the re-examine term too, because I do think, now that you've said that, I've got to add that to my to-do list, because I do think it does involve a re-examine, figuring out, okay, how can I show up? But, when you said that, you're like, it is a networking tool. And if you think about it, if you go to networking events back when we had, and we're in the South here, so even with the pandemic, we're kind of open. And so I do a lot of networking events. I host a lot. But if all everybody did was walk in with their piece of paper resume and just held it out.
In front of you. And you just walked around like this.
That's really what, I think that's such a good visual. As soon as you said it's networking, that's what popped into mind. It's like, you would never go to an event with a piece of paper in front of your hands and just walk around and let people see that piece of paper. So the opportunity at a networking event is to engage and to talk to people and to start dialogue and to figure out what you have in common. Like when my private coaching clients, when I work with them, anytime they're at an event, whether it's networking, philanthropic, anything they're doing, people are like, well, what do I need to do? I'm like, I want you to meet 3 people that you have a great conversation with. I don't care what the conversation's about. It doesn't have to be about work. You can talk about golf. You can talk about your kids. I don't care. But it's 3 people that you can start a dialogue with that you're like, I like this person. I would love to continue our conversation. And I think that's the opportunity on LinkedIn is how can you, because the cool thing with LinkedIn, they're going to be talking about work things anyway.
Right.
So who's intriguing to you? Who do you think would be nice to continue a dialogue with? And that's where you dive in. And that's where you connect with people, comment on their post, and kind of get the algorithms working in your favor a bit.
And to take that one step further, just one click further on the networking. If you go to a networking event, sometimes there's a speaker, right? Or a conference, there's speakers. And how many times have you wished, man, I would love to someday stand up on stage and be that speaker, right? It's an opportunity for you to do some of that.
Yes.
In an environment that is like those conferences related to work. So I went to a conference a couple months ago, and there were some great speakers talking about some amazing things. And it was work related, it was culture related. And I had a chance to sit down at a round table about hiring practices for tech industry. I sat down there with the intention of participating as a participant. And within 15 minutes, I wound up essentially as the moderator, because I had a bunch of people asking me questions, because as we talked about last week, we've done some things that I would argue have been done right.
Yep.
I would love to have an opportunity to stand up at a conference like that and give a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation and talk about this, but it's not going to happen right now because I'm just a guy who likes to talk about these things, right? It's not going to happen. But I can go to LinkedIn and I can write some of those articles and I can take some of those videos and I can post them there. And you know what that does? Someday down the road, you've got that brand that is being built.
It's true. And the very first, that column I talked about, I wrote for years on LinkedIn or on social media. I got that because the editor of the magazine was at a talk I gave and came up to me afterwards and said, would you consider doing a column for us? Which started out as doing a few pieces, turned into a 5-year column position, which was great. In a great PR. Now, the speaker thing interests me because I do a ton of speaking. I speak at a lot of conferences and I love it. This is another thing on LinkedIn, and I've had this happen to me, not as often as I would think, but I frequently, anytime I speak, get connection requests afterwards.
Right.
And it's the personalized ones like, hey, I heard you speak at this conference, really enjoyed your session. I always accept, I always say, thank you so much. Like if you give me a personalized note, I will personalize, thank you glad you enjoyed it. You know, what points did you like? But I have had a handful of times because if you're going to a big conference, you know the lineup, you know the agenda. Right. I have had a number of people, it's typically younger folks, that have reached out and said, hey, I'm attending this conference. I see that you're speaking, would love the opportunity to say hello. I've never once turned them down.
Right.
So they will come and so I'll remember their name because there's not many of them. Like I'll be at a big conference and it might be 2 or 3 people. And they'll come up to me. I'm like, hey, be sure, would love to say hello. Come find me. And I don't take it upon myself. I'm like, come find me. And they do. The ones that come and find me, I remember who they are. And we'll sit down and have a conversation. Or if I've got 5 minutes or whatever, or if, there's a line to ask questions afterward, they're skipping the line. So it's a great opportunity to do that. And I've done that even with larger speakers. There's a very large speaker I was going to his conference. And I know he's a big fan of video messaging, so I sent him a video message and said, super excited for your conference. I know you're got probably up to your eyeballs in prep. Can't wait to see it. He messaged me back and said, love the video message, would love to meet you. He literally had me come down early to meet with him, and this was the main guy.
And 15 years ago, that opportunity didn't exist,
No,
right? 15 years ago,
not at
you wanted to
all.
meet the main guy.
Yes.
You were trying to stalk him the night before, hoping he got into the hotel early, and you're like
You're
sitting
waiting
in the lobby.
elevator
Right,
up and down
right.
and up and down.
Or you're trying to get to that room wherever the speaker is presenting 20 minutes early, 30 minutes early, hoping you can catch them for 5 minutes. And what are they thinking about at that moment?
Their speech.
I'm going through this in my head. They don't want to be interrupted. Mm-hmm. There was no other real way to do it unless you were stalking them, weeks and months ahead of time, or sending them letters or emails at the office. That's exactly what this type of network can and should be used for. Hey, I really would love to sit down and talk with you. I see you're going to be at this speech. I'm really looking forward to it. Send.
Right.
Connection request, send.
And that's the opportunity here is the biggest point I want to make with LinkedIn is the intentionality around it. I feel like the more people can be intentional with how they're using it with, hey, here's the 20 people I really want to get in front of. Here's the 3 speakers I'd love to meet, and figure out how you can, as a human, connect with them, figure out who they know. I joke all the time about it being professional cyber stalking because it is. You can find out anything you want about a lot of people,
Right.
but then make it human. Then go and connect with them and try to have real conversations.
Right. I mean, cyber stalking is just trying to find out information about your ideal candidate. You know, if we're talking about it in the positive sense,
Yes.
right? It's what market research used to be. This
Exactly.
is targeted research.
Yep.
You're using it to your advantage because you have a positive outcome you're looking for.
And you can also use it to your advantage to figure out how to reach that person. You know, to our point earlier is if you're going, make your list. You know, I say this with a lot of my clients. Go make a top 20 list of top 20 prospects, top 20 potential hires, whatever it is. Write down 20 people's names that you don't know, but you really want to know,
Right.
and start engaging with them. Follow them, follow their posts, comment. Not cheesy, not sending requests, do business with me, but more like just engaging and being a human and letting them know that you see them, you hear them, you appreciate, the parts that are standing out to you about what they're saying.
So I know we're probably running up against the clock here. Piece of advice as well. If you're not in the prospecting industry, you're not trying to sell something or become a consultant, you're just somebody who is, again, working a professional job, but you have a desire to move forward, move up. I would argue there are a couple things you need to make sure you do. One, go and find everybody in your company on LinkedIn and send connection requests to them. There's two reasons. One, it's good to expand that network.
Yes.
Two, when you're looking to be promoted, those decisions are made in the rooms that you are not in. If you want someone speaking your name in those rooms that you are not in, your boss's boss, etc., you need to be on the top of their mind. And this gets back to that, hey, if they're using LinkedIn and I'm using LinkedIn, start building your brand, talk a little bit about yourself. I would not be in the position that I was promoted to on the 1st of this year if it hadn't been for me taking the time to actively work to build my brand. As I love leading, I love coaching, I love doing the things that I'm doing on LinkedIn. And I made sure that I was connected to everybody in my company. Now, I did it not for that reason.
And you engaged with them and everything, not
Engaged
just
with them.
connected. You
Right.
stayed engaged
Right.
and kept engaged.
All of a sudden, I get my CEO commenting on a post that I made about the school bus and a lesson you can take from that. You know what? He might not really care, but I promise you, something like that sits in some key person's mind
Absolutely.
down the road.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think this is great advice. And I think for those of you guys listening, use it to engage, use it intentionally, use it to build beyond just that resume that it was 10 or 15 years ago.
And it's not a dating site.
And it's not a dating site. I know. Well, Derek, thank you for being with us again, sharing your tips on LinkedIn. And I will look forward to continuing to engage with you there. All right, guys, take all these tips, find your people on LinkedIn and engage. But most importantly, be you, be real, and try to build your personal brand. So until next week, have a fantastic one. Go do some good stuff, and we will see you next week on another edition of Renee.